Greetings, Professor Morla. I'm pleased to present to you today my presentation on investment in Germany. So most people think of Germany as a vibrant, beer-drinking, pretzel-eating tourist destination with mixed history and international relations. What most people do not realize is that Germany is the largest economic power in Europe, with a GDP of $3.67 trillion, making it the fourth largest economy on the planet, trailing the United States, China, and Japan. Germany is also the third largest exporter in the world, trailing only China and the United States, and the third largest import economy in the world, again trailing the United States and China. Its trade balance rank is number 2 with a surplus of over $270 billion, which we will talk about more later in the presentation. Now let's take a look at exports. We're going to look at value, partnerships, goods, and trends over the last couple of years. So in 2017, Germany's total export value was $1.45 trillion, which you can see circled on the left-hand side of the screen. The United States, France, and China were the largest ship-to partnership countries. If we look at the top 5 exported goods out of Germany, they were motor vehicles and parts, industrial machinery, electrical machinery, and pharmaceuticals. And also precision instruments, rounding out the top 5. I'm sure most of us know of or have heard of German cars such as BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, or Volkswagen. We can clearly see that market reflected in the $258 billion export value, which are the number 1 export goods of motor vehicles and parts. The main export industries are machines, transportation, and chemical products. Machines make up 27%, transportation 24%, and chemical products 13%, rounding out the top 3, with a pretty wide mix of other exports making up less than 10% of the total by industry, which we see on the right-hand side of the graph. If we look at trends, we can very clearly see a couple of things. We see a sharp downturn from 2014 into 2015 with Eurozone fears, the Greek bailout, and international economic uncertainty driving exports down. There's also a relationship to FDI, which we'll see later on in the presentation. It remained flat from 2015 into 2016, and then we see a nice pickup in 2017 with that same trend continuing into 2018. The first 3 quarters of 2018 leading the first 3 quarters of 2017 as a comparative. Now we'll take a look at this same thing, values, partnerships, goods, and trends for imports as well. You'll see here in 2017 total import value of $1.17 trillion, with China, the Netherlands, and France being the largest ship-in partners. We can see the top 5 imported goods being industrial machinery, electrical machinery, motor vehicles and parts, and oil and mineral fuels. Ironically, some of those same goods on the export list are on the import list, like the industrial machinery, motor vehicles. What is important to point out is that, and we'll take a closer look in a bit, Germany has to import almost all of the crude oil and refined oil, petroleum it needs for domestic use, as it produces very little of its own. Again, we see the domestic import industries being machinery, transportation, and chemical products at 27%, 14%, and 12% respectively. We see that in the irony of it is that the import markets of machinery, transportation, and chemical products are filling gaps for the export goods because the raw materials don't exist in Germany. So they have to purchase a large amount of products to be able to refine those exported goods, create them, manufacture them, and then ship them back out. Trending data is very similar to exports. We see again that large downturn in 2014 into 2015, relatively flat through 2015 and 2016, and a nice pickup again in 2017 with that trending continuing through 2018 as well. I did want to do a direct comparison between the export and import values to try to figure out where we could find that surplus, which we see as the trade balance in the top right-hand side of the screen. We see, if you look at exports on the left and imports on the right, an almost mirror or parallel value between the two, where you can see again that the uptick in 14, big downturn in 15, flat through 16, and then that pickup in 17. And the difference between exports and imports is that trade balance, or that surplus, of $276 billion, which ranks them second in the world, only behind China, which has a trade balance of actually almost double that value. If we shift now, we're going to take a look at resources, particularly Germany's natural resources, and how that plays into the import and export markets that we've already talked about. As we've noted earlier, we can see here in the import versus exports by product. I've translated the top three into English from German for us to take a look at, with crude oil, petroleum, and coal having the largest differential in export versus import value. So on the right-hand side is the more they have to import, left-hand side is the more they have to export. You see that big gap with the circle where they have to buy a lot of that crude, petroleum, and coal because they don't produce enough of it on their own. We do see a tapering as the industries continue down. You see that taper, but you see an almost parallel effect where they're importing as well as exporting about the same amount, and that's due to just some trade compliance as well as the ability to purchase the raw materials more cheaply from outside Germany, bring them in, refine them, use them in the manufacturing process, and then ship them out. We can also see here in the resources overview, we take a closer look, we can see the large amount of resources that Germany produces, such as potash, sulfur, and gypsum, which are on the top left-hand side of the screen. Those are the top three exported materials. If you look at the chart in the middle, we can start to see where the export and import values, the export values start to reduce, the import values start to increase, with talcum and below being absolutely 100% import only. Important to note here too, we see that 87% of natural gas and 98% of petroleum products are import only because they are not manufactured in Germany. They don't have the resources on their territory, on their land, to be able to produce those goods. So they got to bring them all in. Looking here briefly at a resource map, we can see some areas highlighted: black coal, brown coal, rock salt, large industrial areas, and oil. I did want to point out, you'll see the circle in the northwest of the country. That's where the majority, the small amount, but the majority of the oil is produced. On the right-hand side, we can very clearly see the large industrial areas that have picked up as a result of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany in 1990. So you see that large industrial area representing a lot of the foreign direct investment in that sector, as it was pretty much undeveloped as well as unused during Soviet occupation and use. Speaking of foreign direct investment, now we're going to shift gears and take a look at some of the FDI going on into Germany. If we look here at the inflow over the last 5 years, we can very clearly see that in 13 to 14, a huge downward trend, with 14 representing a pretty low FDI value. That was immediately reflected in the export and import markets, which took the downturn just a year later. Similar flat trend from 2015 to 2016. On the right-hand side of the screen, we can see a significant difference in 2017 of the outflows of foreign direct investment at 77.5 billion US dollars, and the inflows at 30 billion US dollars. This, I think, signifies a slowdown. I believe this is due to the refugee crisis and some political reforms going on in Germany currently. I think as soon as the 2018 data is published, I would expect that the FDI to be pretty much flat, if not negative, to 2017 from a net inflow standpoint. I wanted to take a look too at a 1 and 5 year trend just to see what the trending data showed us. We can see both in the 1 and 5 year, that middle line is that trending data. It is trending up, but very, very slightly. What is important, and what I also wanted to highlight, was both the 1 and 5 year, the 5 year especially, you start to see huge fluctuations in the outward and inward flow of foreign direct investment. I think a lot of that, again, has to do with some uncertainty in the Eurozone and some fluctuations in the international economy, as well as some German regulation changes and political shifts going on due to, again, refugee crisis and a couple of other items. So where is this FDI coming from? Important for us to know and take a look at. 2016 was the last published data. In 2016, we can see that the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and the United States were the top 3 foreign direct investment countries putting money into the German economy and investing in the German economy. Interesting here also to note that with the exception of the United States, all of the other top nations are from within the Eurozone. And I do think that signifies the success of the European Union and its economic focus to really stabilize the entire region. I think it just makes everything easier. It makes it easier for that investment dollar to get to the right place. and it's certainly stabilizing. So taking a look now at culture and politics, it's important for us to talk about business dealings in Germany as well, something for us to consider. The Germans are very big on their punctuality, their order and rules, and especially their hierarchy. You have to be very careful understanding who you're dealing with and who you're talking to within the construct of the company. Having the wrong conversation with the wrong person can ultimately lead to an unsuccessful business deal or trade. Second, I wanted to look at the culture for trade with foreign direct investment up, as well as a really, really low unemployment rate. We see that exports and FDIs are really high, GDP's kind of in the middle, but that unemployment and inflation rate are really significant for a couple of reasons. The first one is that the higher GDP capita and low inflation show how strong the economy is, which I think opens up a large commercial base for consumer products, as many people have discretionary purchasing capability. But I also believe that that low unemployment rate should probably make us think twice about investing directly and setting up an operation in Germany, as I think it would be very difficult for us to be able to find good qualified people at a fair price. I think we'd really struggle to hire the right type of people given that unemployment rate is so low and the economy in Germany is pretty strong. The political system, again, it's important in that it's kind of out of the way. With an A1 rating, the risk is very, very low. Infrastructure is great. Energy production and transmission is good. There's, again, a good electrical grid, highly educated, skilled labor staff, so very, very low risk for investing, and the political system doesn't really get in the way as they obviously allow FDI and continue to invest in and encourage foreign direct investment. Similar political system to the one in the United States, executive, judicial, and legislative branch. 4-year political election cycles with the exception of a president, which is elected every 5 years. The 4-year cycle shouldn't really cause too much economic turmoil or instability in the economy. It's a pretty stable system that shouldn't really deter us from investment. Trade policies are interesting. Germany actually doesn't have a great index of economic freedom. That 74.2% rating is due to the fact that there are both legacy German and now EU regulations that require a little bit of tricky paperwork in order to invest and be successful. That can add some complexity, but that number 3 rank or the number 3 score below it should really help bolster our decision to invest. I think this is a highly desirable market, and we can see here they call it the best overall country ranking is based on how global perceptions on a variety of attributes could potentially increase trade, travel, and investment. It's safe, it's clean, it's good to be in, and it's a market I think we really have an opportunity to be able to grow in. International memberships, Germany is not only an economic power, but they're a world leader as a member of the G20, the IMF, WHO, UN, WTO, and Interpol. They've set themselves apart again, not only as an economic leader, but really as a global influencer and someone very much involved in what's going on all the way around the world. Finally, the regional trade agreement. Because of the EU's removal of barriers and consolidation of currency, the largest RTA is within Europe itself as the EU member nations. Those 27 current EU member nations with whom Germany can trade freely with should pretty much influence our decision, especially because entry into Germany can also grant us access into all the other EU nations, which we would consider a huge benefit for our organization's growth opportunities. So finally, my recommendation, obviously, as the coins start to build there, I'm going to go with the yes for investment. I think with one of the world's strongest economies, a favorable political climate, a large consumer base, and strong EU relationships, if we manage our opportunity correctly and keep a close eye on those EU and German regulations, there's really no doubt in my mind that we will be successful in investing into Germany. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and your attention for my presentation today. Professor Morla, I also like to thank you for your time. I know you've had a long travel day, so I hope you enjoyed this presentation and you found it informative. I certainly did as I went through and figured out how to put it all together. Here you'll see references over 2 pages. This is the first page, and then the second page here. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.